Welcome to Land of the Bible. I'm your host, David Sussman. This week, we will explore the ancient port city of Caesarea. On the shores of the Mediterranean and about an hour north of Tel Aviv lies one of the most fascinating cities in the land of Israel, Caesarea. Built over 2,000 years ago by King Herod, this city became a center of power, culture, and faith. For the Jewish people, Caesarea was a place of resilience and endurance. This city also marks a turning point in the spread of the Christian religion, where the Apostle Paul was imprisoned and where Cornelius, the first Gentile believer, embraced his faith. Today, thanks to ongoing excavations and new discoveries, we are uncovering more of Caesarea's extraordinary story, its triumphs, its struggles, and its lasting impact on Jewish and Christian history alike. I'm David Sussman, and in this episode of Land of the Bible, we'll walk through the streets of ancient Caesarea and see how its history continues to inspire today. Join me on this remarkable journey through time. Welcome to Caesarea, a coastal city built on the shores of the Mediterranean by King Herod. King Herod ruled Judea under Roman authority, but his loyalty really lied in power. And his greatest monument to that power was right here in the city of Caesarea. And on its edge, he built one of the grandest palaces in the land of Israel. Caesarea wasn't just a city. It was Herod's answer to Rome itself. It was a port, a cultural hub, a showpiece to the empire, right here on the dusty shores of Judea. And right in the heart stood his palace. And here behind me are the ruins of King Herod's palace, a masterpiece that was carved in stone between land and sea. But to understand the palace, we need to understand the man who built it. King Herod, he comes to power in a time of chaos, civil wars here in the land of Judea, religious tension, and shifting alliances. In order to survive this tumultuous period, he aligned himself with Rome. In return, Herod was crowned king of the Jews. But he knew titles meant nothing unless they were carved in stone. He immediately began to build fortresses, cities, monuments. Masada and Jerusalem come to mind. But none was more ambitious than Caesarea. The palace stretched out into the sea on this rocky part of the shoreline. It had 2 levels, public halls above and private quarters below. It had beautiful mosaic floors and incredible colonnades, but most remarkably is if you look right there in the center, you can see a perfectly cut rectangle. And there, he had a freshwater swimming pool surrounded by waves of the sea on 3 sides. Imagine standing here 2,000 years ago, sea spray in the air, music echoing through the vaulted halls. and Herod entertaining Roman generals, philosophers, governors. This wasn't just a royal residence. This, for King Herod, was a stage. Herod built his palace here to impress Rome, but he also built it for another reason, to remind the people that he wasn't just a client king, he was a ruler with a vision, a man with the ability to build cities, to turn the barren coastline here into one of the greatest cities in the Roman Empire. It's quite possible that the most significant Christian event to take place here in Caesarea is that of the Apostle Paul, who will be arrested and seized in the city of Jerusalem and brought here to Caesarea, where he will be imprisoned for 2 years in the palace of King Herod. He'll stand before 2 governors and even King Agrippa himself, and still he declares his faith. At the final moments of his trial, he'll plead to the Caesar of Rome. And it was from Caesarea that he'll leave the harbor and his sail will be set for Rome.
Imagine walking where Jesus walked, where faith comes to life. Feel the Bible story unfold around you, from the green Galilee to Jerusalem's ancient streets. Experience the serene and welcoming land of the Bible, where miracles happen. Put your heart where His footsteps are. Visit Israel.
Speed, strategy, spectacle. In ancient Rome, there was no greater thrill than the war of the chariot race. And that same war echoed through this massive arena. Welcome to the Hippodrome of Caesarea. Built over 2,000 years ago, this grand structure stretched out over 3,000 meters, nearly 1,000 feet, and it could hold over 10,000 spectators. This wasn't just entertainment though. This was power, politics, pride, racing on wheels. Let's now step out into the sand and into the ancient sport of Rome. It was here that horses thundered down the track, 4 teams at a time, racing 7 laps around the central spine, the spina that I'm walking through right now. But it wasn't just about speed. It was about skill, control, survival. Crashes were common, and so were injuries. And the crowd, they loved it. From the lowest citizen to the highest Roman official, it was here in the Hippodrome that the city came to life. Each of the 4 teams had its own color: red, green, blue, or white. And the fans, man, were they loyal, even to the point of violence. Chariot racing in the Roman Empire was so important that it even led to riots in several cities. But it wasn't just about the sport, it was about the spectacle. So during festivals and celebrations, the races would be held in honor of King Herod, or the Caesar of Rome. And this was the genius of Roman entertainment. It distracted, it dazzled, but most importantly, it reinforced authority. And here in Judea, in the latter part of the 1st century BCE, that authority lied solely with King Herod. Let's head now to another entertainment district, the theater here in the city of Caesarea. Rising above the Mediterranean Sea, we have the Roman theater, the first of its kind to be built in the East. It also happens to be the best preserved theater we have in this entire region. Built by King Herod as proof to the Romans how Roman he could be. He built it in a classic Roman fashion, a semicircle focused on the stage. And behind the stage, he would have had a two-story facade with niches, statues, and fountains. You can just imagine sitting here in the stands with 4,000 other spectators, seeing the comedy or the tragedy, any type of performance. With the backdrop of the Mediterranean Sea and the beautiful skies, it must have been a sight to see. However, this place wasn't just about aesthetics. The acoustics were incredible. 4,000 spectators, whether you were in the front row or in the nosebleed sections, could hear the performers crystal clear. This was a place that was built so well that it stood the test of time. In fact, they're setting up right now for a performance that's going to take place later this week. Walking throughout Caesarea, you'll see ruins from different empires that ruled during the 1,000 years of its existence, whether it's the Romans, the Byzantine, the Arabs, or later on, the Crusaders. And Caesarea wasn't just built with local limestone. A lot of the stone would be imported from throughout the Roman Empire. Beautiful slats of granite and marble would have been brought here. And we can see this great map over here, which shows where a lot of the stone was imported from. But one of the most amazing artifacts that was discovered here was this sarcophagus that we're walking to. And the sarcophagus, the word sarcophagus means flesh eater, and that's exactly what it was. This is basically a coffin. It had two parts, the lower part with a large cavity inside where the corpse would be placed, and the lid, which was always double sloped. And inside, this is where the body and the flesh would decompose. This particular one has the original Greek inscription that notes that this sarcophagus belonged to Procopius, a Roman deacon, a Christian leader here during the Byzantine period. Caesarea was ruled by many different empires, each one leaving their mark on the city. I just walked through a medieval 13th century Crusader gate that was built by King Louis IX, the King of France, who came here on the Sixth Crusade. It's a beautiful example of medieval architecture with incredible groin arches and served a defensive purpose. However, the gate wouldn't last long, as the Crusaders were defeated in 1267 by Baibars, which made way for the Mamlukian Empire. The Mamluks, who were great warriors on horse, were afraid that the Europeans would return once again to the Holy Land via the sea, so they destroyed all of the coastal cities like Jaffa and Caesarea. Caesarea would lay in ruins for the next 900 years until the modern Zionists came here, began to excavate, and turned it into the national park that we're exploring today. The harbor had two parts, the commercial port, which is what we were looking at before, and the royal harbor, which is where I'm standing right now on, well, this grassy knoll, gazing out at remnants of that ancient harbor. Royal vessels would anchor here and disembark right where the stairs are behind me. They would then ascend those steps to the pagan temple that was dedicated to the Caesar of Rome, Augustus. People who were coming here for commercial reasons in the wintertime would take their belongings and put them in storehouses. You can still see the arches where the goods would be placed inside. Some of those arches have been refurbished and have been turned into a beautiful museum that showcases some of the incredible finds that have been discovered there. A new chapter here at the National Park in Caesarea has recently opened, the Harbor Visitor Center. The construction of this visitor center is almost as amazing as the artifacts that are showcased inside. You can see the modern arches here, but behind them you have the ancient vaulted rooms which supported the main temple to Augusta here in Caesarea. It took 5 years, architects and archaeologists working hand in hand together to preserve the ancient while making space for the modern. Once inside, you have 4 vaulted rooms. The first one, a timeline through Caesarea's long history. It has artifacts as well as a beautiful map that lays out the various buildings and when they were built. The second vault has an amazing video all about Herod's complex relationship with his wives, his children, and with Rome. The third vault showcases some of those coins that were discovered by tourists like yourself who are scuba diving under the water. And of course, the last room with statues and Byzantine lamps and all sorts of incredible finds that are worthy for anyone visiting Caesarea to check out. Come with me as we explore something really unique as we go underwater to see some of the ruins that are hidden beneath the sea. Herod's Harbor lasted for several hundred years, but due to tectonic movements and the earthquakes that they caused, along with the currents that were constantly coming from the south, bringing sand from the delta of the Nile River, it eventually came to its end. However, the ruins still lay beneath the water. Here in Caesarea, a one-of-a-kind place in Israel, you can actually go to the dive center, even as a beginner, and go under the water, following 4 clearly marked paths with guiding roads that take you along those ruins to see some of the beautiful marble colonnades and storage houses, ancient shipwrecks, and who knows, you might even find something new. Only in 2015, tourists like yourselves that were visiting here saw something shining in the water. They went over and they moved the dirt around and they found a gold coin. After that, archaeologists came to take a deeper look. And well, what they found was 1,500 gold coins, 700 silver coins that dated back to the Fatimid period, the 12th century CE, and it mentions a leader by the name of Al-Hakim. This was an amazing discovery, and there's so much more underground, under the water, that's still waiting to be discovered. It's an active archaeological site today, and tourists like yourselves who scuba dive under the water help to find some of these ancient ruins.
I I will bless those who bless you, God promised Abraham. Embrace this covenant by connecting with the people of Israel. From Jerusalem's stones to Galilee's shores, experience living faith through their traditions and hospitality. Your journey is more than visiting biblical sites. It's about hearts that welcome your friendship. Your presence matters. Discover Israel.
One of the great things to do outside of the national park is to rent one of these easy riders. It allows you to see some of the ruins that most tourists don't get to. There's mosaics, synagogues. You can even ride these all the way to the aqueduct. We'll strap on our helmet and we'll see some of those ruins as I take you along for the ride. So we're outside the national park right now, but we still could see all the ruins here, the ramparts, the walls of the Crusader city here in Caesarea. Something you can really only see with these easy riders. You can really see the moat that would surround the old city here, protecting the walls, protecting the city and the people inside. So for our first stop here on the Easy Riders, we're jumping off to go to the shoreline where there's an ancient synagogue there, believed to be the one of Rebbe Akiva, one of the greatest rabbis of all time. In all honesty, if there was a Mount Rushmore of rabbis, his face would be on it. Let's go. So we're headed down right now to an ancient synagogue that was built here about 1800 years ago during the Roman period, during the period of the Emperor Hadrian. Hadrian was a terrible guy for the Jewish people. You can see the benches here. The benches in synagogues back then would have wrapped around the entire synagogue, and the bima, like the place where they would read from the Torah, will be situated in the center of the synagogue. And here you have an original mosaic, and you can see it's actually written in Greek, but these are the names of the Jews who donated in order for the synagogue to be built. And another way that we know it's a synagogue, it's not so clear. There's a lot of brush that's kind of overgrown over here, but archaeologists measured this area out and you can kind of see there's like a depression in the land. This was a mikvah, a ritual bath to purify yourself. And this synagogue was used by none other than Rebbe Akiva, as I mentioned before. He's one of the greatest rabbis of all time. And he's the one that encouraged and authorized Shimon Bar Kokhba to rebel against the Romans for a second time within 70 years. The year was 132 CE, and Shimon Bar Kokhba, with the help of students of Rebbe Akiva, built all of these tunnels and caves in the hillsides of Judea, and they began to attack the Romans. And they were quite successful. In fact, they kicked the Romans out of the land of Israel for 3 years. Not one Roman official was here. We started to print our own money again and even drew up blueprints to rebuild the Beit HaMikdash. Unfortunately, in the end, the Romans came with half the Roman army and put an end to the rebellion. We were almost there. But one thing Rebbe Akiva institutionalized was the idea of the community coming together to the synagogue. And as a result, we've been able to stand the test of time, and 2,000 years later, once again, we've returned to our land, the land of Israel. So included in this tour is you get to ride along some of that ancient aqueduct that we talked about earlier on in the episode. But this part here is only partially exposed as it hasn't been fully excavated yet. Nearly every Christian group that visits Israel comes to Caesarea National Park, and if they don't, they're missing out on a great opportunity in their own spiritual quest. And the reason being that it was here in Caesarea that the first Gentile would convert to Christianity. It was here that the gospel would leave and reach the shores of Rome, where the pagan world would eventually convert to those Jewish values that we cherish so much, that are known today as Judeo-Christian values. The flavors of Israel are as diverse as its people, blending centuries of tradition into every bite. In Machane Yehuda, the market's more than just food. It's a palace of culture, connection, and shared heritage. Caesarea is a place where the grandeur of Rome meets the spirit of Israel. Its ruins tell the story of ambition, empire, and faith that shaped the land. Thanks for watching. Make sure to join us next time as we connect you to the people, places, and land of the Bible.